Now we are really starting to move forward into the times we live in, as we will see in this session on how the British set up the Middle East crisis. And now a quick overview of this critical historical event. World War I had a major impact on the return to the Promised Land by the Jews. Now the Jews helped the British defeat the Ottoman Turks in World War I, which led the British and French to control the Middle East. Ishmael and Esau's Arab descendants received significant land grants from the French and the British after World War I. Availability of the Arabs' oil, again, was the driving force behind this political decision by the British and the French. The British and French carved up the Middle East into nations at the end of World War I, without any consideration for the ethnic and cultural makeup of these territories. The British gave away 75% of the land committed to Israel to the current Arab nations that had been mandated by the League of Nations to Israel in 1921. Now once again, the driving force was the Arabs' assurance of their oil being available to the Western nations. The British and the French have suffered the wrath of God in Genesis 12:1-3 for their treatment of the Jews. The British bowed to the pressure being brought on them by the Arabs to reduce the original British mandate as reflected in the map on this slide. When Britain gave Transjordan to the Arabs, it violated Article 5 of the League of Nations 1921 mandate. Article 5 stated, "Britain shall be responsible for seeing that no Palestinian territory shall be ceded or leased to or in any way placed under the control of the government of a foreign power." Well, Transjordan was a foreign power and was primarily populated by Palestinians. The British grossly violated the main premise for Britain being given the mandate by the League of Nations. Now they were specifically charged with only facilitating the immigration of Jews to Palestine to populate and settle the land granted the Jews as their homeland. Britain had explicit instructions not to facilitate more immigration of Arabs into the new Jewish homeland. They ignored this directive and allowed Arabs to migrate to the mandated territory, while restricting the immigration of Jews to the Promised Land. This betrayal by Britain guaranteed Hitler's death camps would be full in World War II. It is not an overstatement to say that the British policy of Arab appeasement and limiting the Jews' return to the Promised Land during World War II was the direct cause of millions of Jews going to Hitler's gas chambers instead of being allowed to immigrate to the safety of Israel. For this mistreatment of the Jews, Great Britain received a terrible punishment in World War II. London and other major cities were bombed and ravaged by Hitler's Luftwaffe. And before this infamous treatment of Jews and betrayal of the mandate, the sun never set on the British Empire. And even though the U.S., Britain, and the Allies won the war, the British Empire came to an end as the result of all of this at the end of World War II. Britain is only a shadow of its former glory, and this was not a coincidence. It was a direct result of the British betrayal of the Jewish people and the Jewish nation. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob still keeps his word. "I will curse those who curse you," and so forth. Now the United States is the main party pushing Israel into a further reduction of the land originally allotted to it. We are foolishly pushing them to accept a Palestinian state filled with Muslim terrorists who believe it their duty to destroy Jews for Allah. The new borders will make Israel indefensible by conventional military means. And once those borders are established, Israel will have only one assurance that they will not be attacked. And guess who? That will be from the promise of the Muslims. In the interest of a short-term peace, we are guaranteeing nuclear war. Israel has the Samson option in case the Muslim armies overrun them. Now this is an Israel nuclear response that will vaporize Arab capitals with thermonuclear bombs. Behind closed doors, the Arab nations have all been warned that Israel will use the Samson option if its total destruction becomes threatened by the Islamic terrorist nations. Are we not doing the same thing the British did, only worse? Let's pray that our leaders will not continue this insane policy, for the God of Israel will certainly keep his word, and this time perhaps against us. Now before we move on to our next session, Israel returns to the disputed land, are there any questions or discussions?